When I think of the various classes that comprise Dungeons & Dragons roster, there is a certain season that I associate the various classes with. For example, Rangers and Fighters, they are like the spring, full of life, energy, and intuition. While Bards, Clerics, Paladins, and Barbarians are like the summer, full of this unerring zeal and purpose that can burn up any obstacle in their way. For casters, it's more of a spectrum of variety. While I put them all roughly in autumn, besides the clerics, because they're all in different parts of the season, sorcerers are in the dog days of summer, while the zeal and heat of the season winds down, and the memories of that heat of summer are still there, while druids are simply in tune with the season and nature as a whole. Wizards begin to study all the various implications and effects while studying in their towers. Finally, warlocks make bargains with the powers that be in order to survive what seems to be a harsh and exacting winter ahead. While rogues are there to be the embodiment of winter because they survive by their wits, not by forthrightness, but rather by hook and by crook. To begin with, I had a miniature that was purchased from Reaper back in the fall of 2020. It was complimentary, sent by the company for buying $40, now $50 worth of merchandise, and getting free shipping as well. So for about a year, it sat in my pile of shame, simply sitting there in its blister pack, waiting to be opened. And in all honesty, the reason why I painted her at all was that I knew it was a sculpt that looked interesting, fairly uncomplicated, and had a 90s vibe to her as well, very much in the advanced Dungeons & Dragons vibe that I had really only seen in the various rulebooks and Dragon magazine issues from that time period. Reaper as a company has been around for quite a while, starting in southern Texas in 1992, and even having the license to several franchises such as Pathfinder, at one point Dungeons & Dragons, but they also have done stuff for id Software for Final Doom in 1997, so there are official Doom Guy minis out there, which is kinda cool. In addition, Reaper maintains their own line of miniatures under several different brands, but for our concerns, we will be simply focusing on their Dark Heaven line, which is primarily concerned with providing miniatures for a more fantasy audience, and also it's a war game, although I do not know how many people play it and what the rules are as well. To start in painting the actual miniature, prime her in black, and then use some white ink to give a highlight to define more details. And then to go with a brown base coat for several reasons. The first is that brown makes sense for a druid in the fall, as it is the color of the soil, the trees, the leaves, and some of the critters. The other reason is that brown is a nice neutral color which can be used to build up to other colors that have less pigments such as oranges, reds, and even yellows, but not be jarring as well. It is a delicate balance that you need to be aware of when doing this. The other thing is just as important is to separate the various pieces of cloth of the miniature itself. While this is often an easier task when painting up, say, Citadel miniatures because the sculpts are usually fairly defined, while this sculpt has details, but it can be too simplistic in some ways. The only places where I intentionally left things to be unpainted were the belt, the hair, the face, her various accessories, and the jewel atop her staff. Now, after getting that base coat blocked in, I decided to wash all the brown parts with some Agrex Earthshade in order to get a nice, rich brown tone. Then, after that, I started to apply a medium orange to her cloak. The front of her dress and the sleeve until it was fairly opaque, and then blocking in the hair as well. I also decided to put some Regrelin Earth by Citadel to give some extra texture to the base. In retrospect, some flock would have also given a bit more of an effect, that is, that this was the forest, and it's not simply the time of year where grass goes dormant, but maybe next time, eh? Then I decided to give some choice highlights on the cloak with a fairly light orange. This was done so I could achieve a sense of contrast of simply having it be flat and boring. After all of that, I decided to apply red not just to build up and off of the orange, but rather to attempt something akin to camouflage. A good chunk of animals do have this ability due to their innate appearances, and my rationale was that a druid at a high enough level would probably develop some type of these things if they were in the biome for a long enough time. I mean, in 5th edition to the best of my ability, and I'm pretty sure in other editions as well, there is no rule for this, but that is what is so great about role-playing games, is that you do not simply have to go by what the rules say. You can go and tweak things, because the biggest role is simply to have fun and not to get bogged down in the rules. You could also justify this by having by just making a role-playing explanation for it as well. Then I take care of the rest of the details of the miniature, the dagger, the scrolls, and belt. It's honestly all of the smaller details which make things come together. The staff with a sapphire top of it is a good start, but the scrolls and daggers really do give the sense that we have a seasoned adventurer on our hands, and not simply someone who just started out. However, all of this being said, when I initially got done with the model, I thought it was pretty bad. Not because of any one thing, but because the elements didn't really mesh correctly, and I was planning on just scrapping the project. Instead, I decided to put it on the shelf while other pressing matters in life needed to be attended to. And honestly, it was the face and the cloak, because it just didn't turn out right, and it's hard to look at your work whenever you think that you have something good, but then it's just kind of terrible. This was the key in all honesty as well. After taking a break from miniature painting due to life and the like, I came back and looked at my druid and decided she was good enough. This is a step on the way to getting good. That in the end, the goal is self-improvement. Besides, I did things differently than what's in norm for me. I stippled, highlighted, understood how to get transitions better, in addition to attempting to recess shape, even if it did not work out entirely, which is okay. The main goal was to be creative and to expand my horizons. Besides, the miniature was technically free, so it was not that big of a loss. In fact, it was pretty great and liberating getting done and having to show for my work. And if I needed to use this miniature for an RPG session, I would, if it made sense to do so, of course. So I'm calling this one good. Maybe I should name her too, so leave your suggestions in the comments down below, please. And then the other thing with it is that the face, even though it's not the best, it could still be a pretty roughed up druid that got into a pretty serious fight or whatnot. Before you go, don't forget to please like, comment, and subscribe. Anyways, this is Frontiers Horizon signing off, and until next time, stay frosty.